This is 20 Minutes of Impact from the United States Energy Association Power Sector Podcast, sponsored by Energy Hub. I'm Herman K. Trabish. I've covered the power sector since 2006, and I currently report for Utility Dive. My guest is David Hochschild, Chair of the California Energy Commission, or CEC. David's going to describe the Electric Innovation Initiative, a competition to find and reward the best ideas to grow the electrification for California that will protect reliability and affordability, and protect against fossil fuel volatility and shortages. David's over 30-year career has included working on empowerment programs under South African President Nelson Mandela, co-founding and working on policy with clean energy advocate Vote Solar, holding executive positions with PV Now and Solaria, and serving as a commissioner with first the San Francisco Public Utilities Commission and with the CEC. He became CEC chair in 2019. So, David, I did some recent reporting and I found the CEC has a long history of overseeing one of the most admired programs in the country for innovation in pilots and demonstrations and technologies. Can you talk about some of the CEC's past successes and then tell us why innovation in electrification is needed and how the Electric Innovation Initiative can deliver it?
Yeah, so for many years, the Energy Commission has run this program called the EPIC program, which is a clean energy innovation program. We support research and development on better battery technology, lighting, vehicle to grid, new energy efficiency technologies, and it has unquestionably been good for our state. We rank #1 in the United States on energy efficiency. We have become the destination state for clean energy startups, and it's really helped drive the cost down for ratepayers. Right now in the market, on the electricity side, the cheapest resources in the market are clean. That's batteries and solar and wind and other technologies along those lines. And that's a function of research and development. So we're big believers in investment in innovation, and especially around electrification. And so I wanted to share a little bit about this effort I launched with my good friend, Senator Chris Lee of Hawaii, who's the author of the first 100% clean energy law in the US. And we launched this last year with a few other folks to basically drive electrification mainstream in the United States. And starting with a national awards program, which we launched in September at Climate Week last year, about 500 people, highlighting some really great cutting edge technologies like electric school buses and super low cost heat pumps, and we have some really compelling things happening now with combining energy storage with fast charging and things like that. So the goal is to really drive electrification technologies mainstream by engaging with state policymakers. And so we're doing 3 innovation tours a year and bringing out state legislators from around the country to come see the stuff. We just brought 30 state legislators from 18 states, bipartisan group, out to California for 2 days to come visit these sites and go to the Zoom electric school bus project in Oakland. 100% of the kids in the Oakland school system going to school on a public bus are going electric. And it's the largest vehicle to grid project in the US. And see there's 5 battery electric ferries we're building to the San Francisco Bay, the first in North America. So there's just very little public awareness about this, but that's the goal.
Yeah, I want to talk more about those projects and the winners from last year too. But we tend to skip over this. Why do you want electrification innovation? Why is innovation needed? It seems to me that the idea, and correct me if I'm wrong, David, but electrification is happening. We have data centers, we have electric vehicles, electric buses, as you mentioned. So we need innovative ways to deliver the electricity that all this demand is growing for. Is that correct? Am I getting that right?
Yeah, that's right. So the good news, the way I would frame it is, the good news is we're getting more than 2/3 of our electricity in the state of California, the 4th biggest economy in the world, is coming from clean sources like solar and wind and geothermal and so forth. And the real game now is to extend the reach of that clean electricity to more and more end uses that today are powered by fossil fuels, but that can transition to electric. And we're, of course, seeing this most notably in the transportation sector, which is now in California, about 1/4 of new vehicles are electric. We have 2.5 million electric vehicles on the road. And that's because, in part, we have more EV charge plugs than we have gasoline nozzles. But that transition can happen and is happening in many other sectors of the economy. I mean, the building sector, we went from having, almost maybe 1% of new construction a decade ago was all electric. Today it's over 80%. People are moving
Wow.
to electric heat pumps. And then, all of these other innovative programs. I mentioned electric school buses, electric long haul semi
Heating.
trucks. That I just came back from visiting the Tesla electric semi truck factory in Nevada, which opens in July. Going to be making 1,000 electric semi trucks a week, 500-mile range. They recharge in 35 minutes. There's a real need to highlight the innovation that's happened, but also to push the innovation forward, because what will make all this go faster is to bring down costs faster, and that's a function of investment and sort of the public-private partnerships that we need. And so that's really the focus: is how do we strengthen this ecosystem so we can accelerate it.
Okay, so yeah, last year was, you mentioned, the first year for this Electric Innovation Initiative, and I want to get you to describe a couple of the other winners and how they're contributing. I understand Electrify America was an award winner for batteries in the city of Atlanta, but I just want to call attention to one thing, but that you already said before we move on, and that is that California is now the fourth largest economy in the world. Just a few years ago, it was the eighth largest. And I hear people, run down California a lot. The new ideas, the strange ideas, they say all these things. Uh, but you can't argue with the growth. So, and your work has been as essential as anybody's to that. But tell us about the Electric and Innovation Initiative winners from last
Yeah,
year.
there is something of a cottage industry about tearing down California,
Yeah.
which people are doing as they're using Google, from their iPhone, companies, with NVIDIA chips or whatever, all invented in California, right? So,
Yeah, exactly.
look, 6 of the 10 most valuable companies in the world today are California companies. We did go from the 10th largest economy in the world about 12 years ago to the fourth largest. And, I would just highlight one of the main critiques that we've gotten from critics around the country who oppose our clean energy agenda is that doing this would be devastating for our economy. Okay. And I have watched
Yeah,
over the last
devastating.
decade as these critics, they say the same thing, by the way, I'm still saying it today, as we have passed Russia and Italy and Brazil and France and the UK and Japan, in economic size, clean energy has been good for our economy. Innovation has been good. We believe in innovation in the state. And so this Electric Innovation Initiative is really just an extension of, I think, the state's philosophy that innovation is good and the clean technology is good. And I would also say one other thing, just before we get into the substance of the program. I grew up in San Francisco in the Bay Area. We never had wildfire smoke in my hometown in my entire life until 5, 6 years ago when the big fires happened. We had a day in the middle of those climate-driven wildfires when the smoke was so thick that it was dark as night in the middle of the day. The street lights came on my street, right? My wife got sick. My kids got sick. We're not having a debate in the state of California about whether climate change might be real, whether the scientists might be right. We are living that, and I think the whole world
You
is
don't
living
have
this. And
you don't,
so,
excuse me
yeah,
for
we
interrupting, but
despite the posture of our current administration, we believe climate solutions must happen, and that there's a lot of economic benefits to doing that. And so, this is really part and parcel of this whole economic agenda we have to address the climate crisis.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah. I want to move to the
yeah,
winners from last year,
so
David. Yeah, but you
yeah,
don't have to convince me about the threat of climate, because I'm in LA County. The city burned down last year, so you know,
yeah,
I think it's important to remind people of that. But
yeah, of course. So
these
look,
winners,
we highlighted. We had a national award process last year. We had 117 submissions, and we had a jury that selected 4 companies. All of them were amazing, 4 entities. Zoom, the electric school bus company in Oakland, 74 buses, 74 chargers, largest vehicle to grid project in North America. Huge success story. And we know that diesel fumes get into the cabs of school buses and affect children's health. So this is really a health issue as well. And they're doing great work. Those buses were made here in California. Really proud of that. We want to see a lot more like that. Gradient was another really impressive winner, a heat pump company out of San Francisco that's developed the first heat pump that can be self-installed. So if you're a tenant, you can take it with you when you go. And the installation in many cases can be, a third of the cost of the system. So big reduction in cost. And they're doing, I think, 10,000 of these installations now in New York City for public housing. Really great innovation there. We also recognize the city of Atlanta for a really creative curbside public EV charging program. That's been one of the kind of missing pieces of the puzzle for renters who may not have a garage, or others who need to find charging to be able to build the infrastructure on streets, attach it to light poles and that kind of thing. So Atlanta's doing a great job there. And the last one was around Electrify America, combining fast charging with energy storage. One of the things that slows the installation of many of these fast chargers is that there's a big draw on the electric grid, and you have to do, in some cases, a very time-consuming electric distribution system upgrade. And so you avoid that when you co-locate it with energy storage. Really simple and important innovation, which we also thought was worthy of recognition. So those are the 4 winners. We are about to post the process for the next set of winners, which will be getting recognized this coming September at Climate Week in New York. So for those of you listening, have a good idea, please go to electricinnovation.org and submit it.
Here's a quick note from the sponsor of our series of podcasts about virtual power plants, Energy Hub. What if everyday devices had the potential to strengthen the grid when it's needed most? Energy Hub helps utilities turn that potential into dependable capacity by coordinating thermostats, EVs, batteries, and other devices so they work together as virtual power plants, or VPPs, that respond to grid needs in near real time. Energy Hub's latest white paper lays out a maturity model for VPPs that can be planned and dispatched with the same confidence as conventional plants while being 40 to 60% less expensive to build. That's why more than 160 utilities across North America partner with Energy Hub to manage over 2.5 million devices that provide 3.4 gigawatts of flexible capacity. Read the white paper and discover what VPPs can do for your grid at energyhub.com. Well, let's talk about that a little bit before we move on. This year they're going to have awards in 4 categories, as I understand it. Oh, and we should mention the deadline for submissions is June 3, so you've got about a month to go here, a little over a month and a half as we're recording. So what are those categories and how were they selected? And how is this activity, the winners, probably even other ideas will come in that don't necessarily win but are good ideas. How's that all going to help California reach its electrification goals?
I've been out of the country for 3 weeks. I just got back, so I actually don't recall off the top of my head the different categories. But I think one of them was a design category, because we are really trying to highlight innovative design itself as a making a new product that's attractive and compelling. And then there's a few others, but I'm afraid I don't recall. I've been out of the country on travel till just a few days ago.
Just for the sake of our listeners, I'm going to mention, because I read this was information that's provided to the podcast. There's an award for scaling, ways to scale new ideas. There's an award for policy innovation, which is an interest here at the podcast. New ways, new ideas for policy that the legislature or the California commissions can put in place. And then there's a sort of an award for people that can deliver power for all, is what it's called. It's things like, what do they call it? Balcony solar, which is a brand new idea that's coming from Europe and is really sweeping the nation, from what I understand. You've heard about all those things, and I think the commission's probably been working on clearing the way for some of those kinds of things, isn't it?
Yeah, I would just say, on policy, like, for example, every 3 years we do our new building energy code. We use that to require solar on new construction on homes in 2019 and to require it on all buildings in 2022. Huge success. We're getting about a gigawatt of rooftop solar just from those building codes alone. And then again, at the beginning of this year, our new code went into effect regarding heat pumps, and it really drives heat pump technology mainstream for water heating and space heating. And so you see the power of policy there, because we're constructing about 120,000 new homes a year in California, and then you can really get these new innovative technologies seeded, and that really helps drive the retrofit market as well. So big believer in effective policy, and we've watched that make a big impact over the last few decades.
Okay. So for our listeners, if you've got some ideas about how policy can be changed or how you can scale these technologies, uh, you should give some serious thought to proposing those ideas for the Electric Innovation Initiative, and you might be part of California history. So, David, I got to ask you one question. I can't let you go without getting your perspective on this really hot topic right now, the affordability of electricity. I want to start by saying there's been a little recognized California achievement. The state long kept its bills pretty low, despite having, rates that everybody always complains about. But that's shifting, and there's a reason to complain these days. How are current CEC initiatives going to help California protect affordability, which is coming under threat, and still meet the quickly growing demand for electricity? What's the commission up to? Give us just an overview.
Well, first, let me just paint the picture. So if you go back to
Yeah.
2000, electricity costs in California were very stable up until, 2018, 2019. What happened then? Wildfire. The number one driver of increased electric rates in the state of California is wildfire. It's climate driven. And unfortunately, those costs, are borne by ratepayers. We don't have some big fund that's coming in and like covering all the costs to do electric utility undergrounding and all the vegetation management. That is borne by ratepayers. And so it has driven up costs, and it's a huge issue. Fortunately, there's a nice alignment here between what is good for ratepayers and what's good for electrification, in that the more electric vehicles, for example, we get on the roads, that drives more revenue into the system. So we have had electric vehicle drivers contribute about $10 billion into the rate base. This is money that before was going to gas stations, and instead you're putting them in. That is important, because most of the system costs, when you pay your electric bill, 2/3 of the cost of that is fixed. It's fixed, basically your distribution system and transmission system and some of the fixed costs. And so if you are spreading those fixed costs over more kilowatt hours, more energy sales, that is a downward force on those rates. And so electrification is good for electric rates. And by the way, it's not just electric vehicles, but all forms of electrification, whether it's electric heat pump or, I have an electric chainsaw, I have an electric bicycle. There's all these things that increasingly are getting electrified, in big ways and small. I mean, even electric tea kettles, were not the standard thing 10, 15 years ago. Now everybody's got one. So all of these things that we're seeing electrification are good for rates. We need to do I would say it's necessary but not sufficient. There does need to be a bunch of other actions to drive rates down. And that is, I think, priority number one for the Public Utilities Commission, is how to get that under control. And also to prevent more wildfires in the future. So this is a big focus on reducing risk. But yeah, we're very mindful of that rates issue.
Yeah, I know that the California Energy Commission and the California Public Utilities Commission have been working on rates. I've been writing about affordability since long before the pandemic, as it were, as our time marker. But that's all the time we have. Look, my guest, I got to thank you. David Hochschild, the CEC chair, has described the Electric Innovation Initiative, a competition to find and reward the best ideas for growing electrification while protecting reliability and affordability. And remember, the submissions deadline is June 3. I also want to thank our sponsor, Energy Hub, and my producer, Melissa Brown. And as always, I want to thank our listeners for taking the time to check out the USEA Power Sector Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe, like, follow, and share with everybody you know our quest for energy transition solutions.